Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will never pass away. Salvador Dali, the great artist, surreal artist of the last century, had a probably the most iconic painting of the resurrection. I want to show it to you now. It's really it's called the Resurrection of St. John of the Cross. And let me point out, if you've never seen it before, it's the cross is very much it's unbloodied cross of Christ. So there's no blood on the cross, which for a Spanish artist would have been very, very unusual. Number one, because they were into the blood in a big way. So it's no blood on the cross, and Jesus is on the cross like he's holding the whole universe in his arms as he gathers them. And the universe below is done in soft colors. The sky is blue but got hues of green and brown, and then the water is calm. And there's a boat there, a fisherman's boat, which is empty, moored calmly at the shore. And there's this strange sort of feeling when you watch this or look at this art. There's both consoling when you look at the calmness of the water and the boat, and then haunting when you see this image of the crucified Christ. And it's the deliberate play between haunting and consoling. The reason why I show that is I think of this when I read all the apocalyptic literature that we hear in today's readings. Our first reading is Daniel, and Daniel is the apocalyptic language. And then the Mark we're hearing today is the end of Mark, and this is apocalyptic genre in Mark's gospel. Now, none of us read apocalyptic style genre today. It's not a genre we use anymore, but it has this sense of eeriness. At the same time, it has a sense of consolation. It's both meant to console and desolate us. And the language is meant to, remember, most of this is written in the times of persecution. And so when Mark wrote his gospel, Jesus had died. They were being persecuted as early Christians. When the book of Daniel was written, they were in exile. They were being persecuted as Jews. And it's that same language to try and rise up that in spite of the darkness of our lives, God will always be there ministering to us. That even though the sky will fall, the moon will only not have much light, you're still my words, and he says it into my words will not pass away. That God and Christ's love is eternal. And that's the console. And that's what we're meant to leave with, is this consoling message, is that I've got this. I've got the whole world in my hands. You don't need to worry, even in the midst of suffering and pain. It's a good reminder, and so we'll be hearing until we're coming to the end of our liturgical year, and that's why we're reading the end, this apocalypse language. We're meant to kind of get this reminder before we head into the Advent season, which is the beginning of a new year. We're reminded of how transient life is, how fragile it is. And at the same time is that when we get sick and we get wounded or we get very ill, it's then we become very clear how transient life is. Because if you've ever been very sick or a loved one's very sick, suddenly everything becomes clear. All things fall away except that which is most important. Now look, sickness and death aren't the only things that can bring this to us, right? Sometimes some incident, accident happens and it kind of wakes us up out of it. I had one of those happen this week. My niece in Utah was driving along I-80, and one of those trucks carrying cars bopped off one of the cars and rolled into her and took her off the freeway, and she spun out of control and flipped over in the car off I-80 up in Utah. And when you look at the car, and fortunately she was wearing her seatbelt, and her dog was in one of those bulletproof sort of containers that the dogs are meant to be in. I now need to go get one for myself. And the dog walks out, and she walks out with no injuries. When you look at the car, you think it's not possible that anyone live. And here she gets away with just a couple of bruises from her seatbelt. Just a sharp reminder of how transient. Like 1 minute you're driving along, next minute, boom, the car flies off the road and you're taken out, and there you could be gone. Never take life for granted. And we do. And so what today's reading is trying to do is trying to wake us up. Say, listen, look, stop, take attention. Jesus saying, wake up, I'm always here, but pay attention to me. Pay attention now, I'm here. Don't wait to the end times. I'm here now. And yes, so what are we called to do in this time? And the only way I know how to do this, and I know I sound like a broken record, is we've got to pause and pray. We've got to take the time to stand back and look at the instance of our life and see how fragile life is and how precious it is, and to be grateful for what we have. Even if our health is slowly declining in old age, we still say, thank you, Lord, for the gift of life. Thank you, Lord, for the gift of friends and love in my life. Thank you, Lord, for the gift of faith that I can see you in my everyday. Let us wake up. Let us take note. God has got us all in his world, in his hands. But let's pay attention and be grateful to God for all that he has given us.